Welcome to A Listen at a Time, where we will be learning something, a listen at a time.
It feels like our financial world is increasingly going digital, almost everything, and central banks globally are really taking notice.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the biggest responses seems to be this growing interest in central bank digital currencies, CBDCs.
Definitely. I mean, from, research papers right through to actual pilot programs, central banks everywhere are actively exploring what digital versions of their own currencies could look like.
Right.
And while you can't talk about CBDCs without talking about China's digital yuan, the e-CNY, it's probably the one everyone's watching most closely.
Which is exactly what we're diving deep into today. We're kind of setting aside the headlines for a bit, aren't we? Getting right into the engine room.
Yeah.
This deep dive is really laser focused on the technical side of China's e-CNY.
hmm
The underlying tech, the architecture, the basic design ideas that make it tick.
That's right. We'll be unpacking the nuts and bolts, really, how the e-CNY is actually built, from its core control setup right through to how it handles things like, well, user privacy and that really intriguing offline payment feature.
Offline payments, yeah, we'll get to that.
It's a pretty fascinating look under the hood of a digital currency that's, well, already seeing quite a bit of real-world use.
Now, if you're picturing some super technical lecture, full of jargon you can't understand, please don't worry.
I know.
We're really committed to breaking this down in a way that's understandable, even if maybe your background isn't in coding or financial systems design. We'll definitely get into the specifics, but we promise we'll keep the explanations clear, accessible.
And it's important to remember, this is just one piece of the puzzle, right? The e-CNY story has lots of angles.
True.
In future deep dives, we'll look at, say, how far along the implementation is, its potential global impact, maybe the effects on individuals. So think of this as our foundational look, just the tech itself.
Okay. So our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward. Give you a solid grasp of the technical foundations of the e-CNY. All right, let's unpack this. When we talk about the technology actually powering the e-CNY, where should we even start? What's the bedrock?
I think the critical starting point, the absolute fundamental, is grasping this centralized control.
Okay.
The e-CNY is a centralized digital currency, period. You can imagine it as a purely digital version of cash, but it's issued and totally managed by the People's Bank of China, the PBoC. That's the central bank.
Right.
This centralized nature, that's a really key characteristic. It sets it apart right from the beginning.
Centralized. Got it. So how does that stack up against something like maybe Bitcoin? I think that's the digital currency most people have heard of.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison to draw. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're fundamentally decentralized.
Right.
They run on public blockchains. Think of those as like shared digital record books, ledgers, where lots of different participants, often anonymous, work together to verify all the transactions. The e-CNY is totally different. It does not use a public blockchain for recording the vast majority of everyday retail transactions. It's a much more like a digital evolution of the physical renminbi, the RMB, where the central bank keeps the ultimate authority and oversight. Full stop.
Okay, so the PBoC is right at the heart of this. How does that central control actually work in practice? How does the e-CNY, get from the PBoC into my digital hands if I want to buy, I don't know, my morning coffee?
Good question. That process uses what they call a two-tier operational framework.
Two tiers.
Two tiers. At the top tier, tier 1, the PBoC issues the e-CNY, but it issues it to a specific group of authorized commercial banks. These are basically the big financial institutions, the banks that have permission to handle the digital currency.
Okay, so not directly to me.
Not directly to you, no. Then, at the second tier, tier 2, these commercial banks distribute the e-CNY out to the public, to people like you and me, to businesses. And they do that through digital wallets.
That actually sounds kind of familiar. A bit like how physical money works now, doesn't it? The central bank prints the notes, and then they get out into the world through the normal banking system.
That's a really helpful analogy, actually, yes. It pretty much mirrors the existing two-tier system for issuing and circulating physical RMB.
Wow.
So the e-CNY is basically a digital upgrade to that structure they already had. It keeps the central bank in control, but uses digital tech for, well, faster distribution and transactions.
Right.
And this structure, it lets the PBoC keep direct control while still using the existing networks and customer relationships of the commercial banks. Makes sense.
So if I do have e-CNY, where is it? Where do I keep it? Is it like having a digital bank account but directly with the central bank.
Not quite a direct account in the way we usually think of it. You
Okay.
hold and manage your e-CNY in what's called a digital wallet.
Okay, a wallet app, probably.
Exactly, usually an app. This wallet system is the interface, how you store it, send it, receive it. But what's really interesting, technically speaking, is the tiered wallet system the PBoC designed.
Tiered wallets.
Yes, and this ties directly into their whole concept of controlled anonymity.
Controlled anonymity. Okay, that sounds like it definitely has some technical meat on the bones. What does that actually mean in practice? How does it work?
It's basically the PBoC's approach to juggling two things. The desire people have for some privacy in their digital payments, and the government's need to have oversight, to prevent illegal stuff like money laundering or terrorism financing.
A balancing act.
Exactly. The core principle they've stated is something like anonymity for small value transactions and traceable for high value transactions.
Okay, so these tiered wallets you mentioned, how do they actually do that? How do they manage that balance?
Precisely. It works like this. Basic e-CNY wallets, the lowest tier, you can often open them with very minimal ID. Maybe just the phone number.
Really? Just a phone number?
For the basic ones, yeah. So that gives you a degree of anonymity for, small everyday purchases. Buying that coffee.
Gotcha.
However, for the higher tier wallets, the ones that let you hold more money and make bigger transactions, you need much stricter real name verification.
Okay. Like linking it to your national ID card.
Exactly. Linking it to your national ID, maybe other identifying info too. Think of it like different security levels. You need more proof of who you are to unlock more powerful features.
So the more you use the e-CNY, especially for bigger amounts, the less anonymous you become to the central authority.
That's the core idea, yes.
Yeah.
This controlled anonymity is a deliberate design choice, a compromise.
Right.
It aims to give users some privacy, maybe shielding them from the kind of massive data collection you see with existing commercial payment platforms,
Like Alipay or WeChat Pay.
Exactly. And this is crucial. The state always keeps the technical ability for financial surveillance and control if needed.
Oh.
And that's a fundamental difference, compared to the strong emphasis on user privacy you often hear about in discussions around CBDCs and, say, Western democracies. This design clearly prioritizes state oversight while still offering maybe more privacy than users get from current private platforms.
Right. That makes sense from a sort of governance viewpoint. Okay, so we've covered the centralized control, the two-tier distribution, these tiered wallets for controlled anonymity. What other key technical bits or important design choices should we understand about the e-CNY?
Well, there are several other key technical things. We've already hit the centralized ledger. That's the PBoC's master digital record book of all the e-CNY and where it goes.
Right, the master list.
Another really important feature is that the e-CNY uses a token-based digital representation of value.
Token-based. What does that mean practically?
It means instead of just seeing a balance number change in an account, like in your bank app, you can think of it more like you're holding individual digital coins or notes. Each one is issued by the central bank and has its own unique digital signature.
Huh, okay. So it's not just a number in a database entry somewhere. It's more like having a specific digital object that represents value.
Exactly right. And this token-based approach, it has implications for things like security and, very importantly, for enabling those offline payments we mentioned earlier.
Yes, offline payments.
Speaking of which, the e-CNY is designed with what they call dual offline payment functionality.
Offline payments for a digital currency.
Yes.
That sounds, well, like a pretty big technical hurdle. How can you make a transaction without any internet?
It is. It's a fascinating technical challenge they've really leaned into. The basic idea is to let a transaction happen directly between two devices, two phones, say that both have e-CNY wallets, even if neither phone is connected to the internet at that moment.
Wow. How? Magic.
Haha, not quite magic. It usually uses technologies like Bluetooth or maybe near-field communication, NFC, like tap to pay.
Okay.
The two devices basically do a direct digital swap of these value tokens we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a sort of digital handshake where both phones record the transaction happened.
But, wait, the obvious question pops up immediately. How do you stop someone from spending the same offline digital tokens over and over again?
Yeah.
The double spending problem.
Yeah.
If there's no central server checking in real time.
That's the absolute critical technical hurdle, exactly.
Right.
And the PBoC has been working on various solutions, likely involving cryptography, maybe secure hardware elements in phones or special payment cards.
Secure hardware, like a chip.
Possibly, yeah. Or secure elements within the phone's existing hardware. It probably involves storing a limited, maybe encrypted transaction history right there on the device.
Okay.
Then, when the devices eventually get back online, these offline transactions get reported back and reconciled with the main central ledger. And there have to be mechanisms, technical and probably legal too, to detect and block any double spending attempts.
So there are limits, probably.
Oh, almost certainly. There are likely regulations and technical limits on how much value you can transact offline, or how often, partly to manage that risk. But still, this offline capability is a potentially huge advantage, right? Think about areas with spotty internet or even just network outages.
Yeah, that's actually really clever. Very practical. Okay, so centralized ledger, token-based value, this impressive offline payment capability. Anything else technically unique about the e-CNY's design?
Yes, one more really significant feature. The
Yeah.
e-CNY is designed with programmability.
Programmability, you mean like got code embedded in the money itself?
Pretty much, yeah. It
Yeah.
means there's the potential to include rules or code within the digital currency that can automatically trigger payments or enforce specific conditions when certain things happen. We're talking smart contract functionality, basically, but at the level of the central bank's currency.
Programmable money. Wow. That sounds like it could open up a whole world of possibilities.
Oh.
Like, what could you do with that?
Well, the potential uses are pretty wide-ranging. You could imagine conditional payments, maybe that only get released automatically when, say, a delivery is confirmed in a logistics chain.
Yeah.
Or perhaps government subsidies or benefit payments that are automatically sent out only to recipients who meet specific, verifiable criteria programmed into the payment itself.
Okay.
But yes, there's always a but. This feature also raises some significant concerns, especially around ideas of social control.
Right.
The ability to program money could, at least in theory, allow for incredibly detailed control over how, when, and where people can spend their funds.
That definitely raises some big, complex questions about the role, maybe the reach, of a central bank in this digital future.
Yes.
Now, earlier you said the e-CNY is different from both decentralized crypto and those big existing payment platforms in China like Alipay and WeChat Pay. Can we dig into those comparisons a bit more technically?
Well, let's tackle crypto first. We already flagged the biggest one. Centralized control versus decentralization. That's fundamental.
Yeah, night and day.
But the technical differences go deeper. The e-CNY is a direct liability of the central bank. That means it's basically digital central bank money backed by the full authority of the state. It's like a digital IOU from the PBoC.
Okay.
Cryptocurrencies usually have no central issuer, no guarantor.
Yeah.
Their value can be, well, incredibly volatile, as we know.
Right. You don't really expect the value of your digital Yuan balance to suddenly halve or double overnight like some cryptos can.
Exactly. Then there's anonymity and privacy. We talked about the e-CNY's controlled anonymity, some privacy, but state oversight is always possible.
Right.
Many cryptocurrencies aim for much greater pseudonymity or even try for full anonymity, usually without that kind of built-in state access point.
Different philosophy.
Totally different philosophy. Another key technical point is permissioning. The e-CNY system is permission. The PBoC decides who gets to operate parts of the system, like those authorized banks.
Okay, it's a closed club, sort of.
In a way, yes. Whereas major cryptocurrencies often run on permissionless blockchains. Anyone, in theory, can download the software and participate in validating transactions.
Open to all.
Right. And finally, you have to remember the context. The e-CNY's development was, at least partly, driven by the Chinese government wanting a state-controlled alternative, maybe even a countermeasure, to the perceived risks of private, potentially uncontrollable cryptocurrencies.
Okay, that makes the technical differences very clear. Now, how does the e-CNY technically stack up against the established giants, Alipay and WeChat Pay? Because they're already huge in China.
Yeah, this is another really crucial distinction to grasp, because on the surface, they might seem similar, use your phone to pay,
Right.
but the money itself is technically different. When you have a balance in your Alipay or WeChat Pay account, that money represents a claim on a commercial bank. It's commercial bank money, basically M1 or M2 money supply, held digitally.
Okay, so it's linked to your regular bank account funds.
Exactly. It's a liability of that commercial bank, not the central bank. The e-CNY, being CBDC, is a direct liability of the PBoC. It's like digital base money, or M0. That gives it a different legal and financial status.
So thinking back to the analogy, e-CNY is like digital cash issued by the government, whereas Alipay with WeChat Pay are more like digital tools to access your bank deposit funds.
That's a very accurate way to put it, yes. Another technical difference the PBoC is pushing is interoperability.
Ah, making things work together.
Right. The e-CNY is designed to work across different digital wallets and different participating banks. The goal is to break down the walled garden effect you sometimes see with Alipay and WeChat Pay.
Yeah, where they kind of operate in their own separate worlds. It's not always easy to send money directly between them.
Exactly. The e-CNY aims to be a more universal rail underneath. Then there's privacy again. While Alipay and WeChat Pay gather a lot of user data for commercial reasons, advertising, credit scoring, etc., with the state potentially accessing it through legal channels,
Hmm.
the e-CNY's design, with controlled anonymity and things like subwallets, aims to give users more privacy from the platforms themselves, even while maintaining state traceability if needed.
Different privacy trade-offs.
Different trade-offs. We also talked about the dual offline payment capability for e-CNY. That's not really a core feature of Alipay or WeChat Pay, which mostly need you to be online.
Good point.
Also, currently, the e-CNY is designed to be non-interest bearing, just like physical cash, whereas funds held in Alipay or WeChat Pay, linked to bank accounts or money market funds, might earn interest.
Ah, okay. No interest on e-CNY.
Not currently, no.
Oh,
And finally, from the PBoC's perspective, the e-CNY provides a crucial backup. It enhances the resilience of the whole retail payment system, which is very heavily dominated by just those two private companies right now.
so it's not just about creating another payment option.
No.
It's also about financial stability, resilience, and offering a public digital currency alternative.
Precisely. It's a very strategic, technological, and policy move by the central bank, reacting to how fast the financial world is changing.
Well, this has been an incredibly useful deep dive into the technical guts of the e-CNY. Just to quickly recap the key things. It's centralized core, that two-tier system for getting it out there. The tiered digital wallets enabling this controlled anonymity, the really interesting offline payment feature, and that potential for programmability built right into the money.
And it's really worth stressing again, the e-CNY is a unique beast. It's a very specific approach to CBDC. It's not just digital cash, it's definitely not trying to be crypto, and it's not just another version of Alipay, it's a kind of hybrid, specifically built for China's goals.
And it's not static, is it? As we speak, it's still evolving, ongoing pilot programs. They're even looking into cross-border uses.
Absolutely. It's definitely a technology and a project to keep a very close eye on as it develops.
For sure.
Indeed. And maybe that leads us to a final thought, something for you, our listener, to chew on. When you consider this intricate technical design of the e-CNY, especially at the centralized control and the deliberate controlled anonymity, what do you think are the biggest implications for digital currencies worldwide? How are different countries going to handle these, frankly, difficult trade-offs between the potential efficiency and power of state-backed digital money and those fundamental ideas of user privacy and maybe even financial freedom in a digital world?
Yeah.
It's a really complex equation, isn't it? And different places seem to be coming up with very different answers based on their own priorities.
Definitely food for thought. And make sure you join us for our next deep dive. We'll be shifting gears a bit, looking more at the current rollout status of the e-CNY, how it's actually being implemented, and digging into some of those bigger potential geopolitical ripples.
Yeah, looking forward to that one.
Until then, thanks for joining us on this technical deep dive into the e-CNY.